Would you like to know how to make a profiterole that looks like that? Large and tender, filled with vanilla ice cream and swimming in chocolate sauce? Or how about an éclair like this, filled with a creme patissiere, lightened with whipped cream, and topped with a maple syrup espresso glaze? These cheese puffs, or gougères as the French call them, are delectable, filled with a mix of Gruyere and Parmesan, some fresh herbs and some spices. All of these from one delicious dough called Pâte à Choux. I'll show you how to make them today on Martha Bakes. Pâte à Choux is a versatile dough that is perfect for both savory hors d'oeuvre and sweet desserts. Your guests will love it. Today I want to show you a really nice dough that's made with basically 4 ingredients: water, eggs, flour, and butter. And this is an odd dough. It's called pâte à choux. And it has a lot of moisture in it so that when it is baked in the oven, it puffs up. And pâte à choux is used for a variety of delicious desserts and savories, including éclair, cream puffs, and it's also used for gougères or cheese puffs. It's not hard to make, but the proportions, the ratio of flour to water to eggs to butter has to be pretty exact to get the right consistency and the right puffiness. I wanted to show you what your puffs should not look like. Here's one that obviously is very heavy, and when you break into it, it's doughy. It has no opening. You could not fill that with a creme anglaise or a whipped cream or ice cream for a profiterole. That is not the kind of puff that you want. This obviously has too much flour. Something's wrong with the ratio. And here's a beautiful cream puff. When you break into this one, has a perfect opening, a big cavity that can be filled with whatever you want, and it will taste good, and it looks good, and it's a nice round shape. That's a good profiterole or cream puff. And this, for an éclair, is much better. When you break this in half, again, the opening, the cavity, is excellent. And so that every bite you take of the éclair, you'll get some filling, you'll get some dough, and you'll get some of the glaze on the top. That's a good éclair. So I'm going to show you how to make the good éclair, the good cream puff, the good profiterole, the good gougère. And these, well, give them to the chickens. Now the dough is actually cooked to start. And into a pot, 1 stick of unsalted butter, 1 cup of water, and a ½ teaspoon of salt. That's it. If you want a little bit sweeter puff, and we'll make 1 batch a little bit sweeter, add 1 teaspoon of sugar. Now we're going to do 2 batches at the same time, and this one will have 1 teaspoon of sugar. Okay, so now put this on the stove, bring both of them to a boil, and then we're going to add 1 cup of all-purpose flour to each of the pots. When I was catering, I would make 6 batches at a time because I use these puffs for hors d'oeuvres filled with crab meat or lobster meat or cheese. A bechamel sauce is very good inside a cream puff. Oh, the butter is melting rather quickly. Just dump the flour in and stir. And then you're going to cook the flour until there's a film of floury dough in the bottom of your pan. So if you're making 2 at a time, work quickly. 3 to 4 minutes is plenty to cook the flour. Okay, so this looks very nice. Now, put each dough into a bowl to cool slightly. You want light, silky, smooth dough. If you put the eggs in while it's too hot, your eggs will cook and you'll have kind of streaks of egg white cooked in your puffs, and that is unacceptable. I'm going to break 4 eggs for this one. You don't want any shells. The eggs are bright yellow, and they do make a kind of yellowy dough, but it does, when it bakes, it's a golden color. It's a good color. So there's our 4 eggs. Now we're going to add 1 at a time. Why one at a time? Because this dough cannot absorb all the eggs at once. Now watch what happens. You stir. It's very wet, and the dough kind of breaks up into segments. And you think, oh my gosh, what happened? It's all broken. Will it ever come back together again? And miraculously, it does. Watch. See how it has all come back? And now you add the next egg. Now see, there's your dough. Look how nice this is. So really beat this around. It's not too sticky, it's not too stiff. And it didn't take too long to make. Now the dough can sit like this, covered with plastic wrap, for quite a while. You can also form your puffs and let them sit on cookie sheets until you're ready to bake them. Oh, 2 to 3 hours, no problem. So here's our dough. And we are going to pipe the dough into the shapes desired. Now, if you want to make éclair, you can draw pencil lines. These are 3 inches long and about 1.5 inches apart. This will give you a nice guide for the shape of éclair that you desire. If you want to make giant size ones, you can do long ones like 5 inches long, no bigger, they're too big. I'm using a tip that measures just a little bit more than 1/2 inch, and I'm using a big canvas pastry bag that's soft and malleable and will allow me to really pipe this dough well. Okay, so now the dough can go right into the bag. I would suggest putting about half the dough in. By folding the top of the bag down, I haven't gotten any dough up here. It saves dough and it makes it much easier to pipe. So we'll start with putting a little dot under each corner of the parchment paper so the parchment paper will kind of stay in place. It's like a little bit of glue here. There. And then move this to whatever position works for you. And hold and pipe. Hold and pipe. And just keep going until you fill your pan. And notice I'm only squeezing with one hand, directing with the other. Little unevenness like this can be smoothed out with a little bit of cold water in your fingertip. Just like that. And then glaze with a little bit of egg mixed with water. 1 egg, a couple tablespoons of water. And if it's well mixed, it will just glaze right on the top. And remember, make sure your oven is preheated to 375. And these should bake anywhere from 20 to 25 minutes. So there, that's done. Now let's make our profiterole. A different shape, round. And if you want to make great big cream puffs, use a full 1 inch tip and make big mounds of the pâte à choux. And more egg glaze. So get those in the oven and watch them rise. An éclair like this, well, you search high and low for them in all the bakeries filled with a creme patissiere. Take one bite and you'll know it's homemade, it's delicious. Creme patissiere. Our profiterole, our éclair, our giant cream puffs are all done. They're baked, they have puffed beautifully, they have very nice light feeling and a really nice cavity inside each one of these beautiful baked goods. I'm going to fill them with creme patissiere, which I'm going to show you how to make right now. This is the classic filling for both cream puffs and for éclair. 2 cups of milk in a saucepan with 1/2 cup of sugar and 1 vanilla bean. Cut the vanilla bean down the length and scrape out the seeds. Those millions and millions of tiny infinitesimal seeds on the tip of my knife. And put this right on the stove and bring the milk to a simmer. And while the milk is heating, you're going to mix the egg yolks, and there are 6 brilliant egg yolks, with 2 tablespoons of sugar, 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. And we haven't used a lot of cornstarch. It's kind of an old-fashioned thickener. And 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. You can use rice flour if you want an even lighter cream. So the milk has scalded. You can see all the vanilla seeds on top of the milk. Now we're going to incorporate a little bit of this into the egg yolks, and then all the egg yolks back into the pan. So here, stirring while you add the milk. Adding the hot liquid to the egg yolks is called tempering. Okay, so now scrape this back into the milk and put this back on the stove and cook 2 to 3 minutes. Again, this is something that must be stirred constantly. You do not leave the stove. Cook on medium-high until it coats the back of a wooden spoon. Because of the flour and cornstarch, this will thicken up quite substantially. And stir in 2 teaspoons of butter. Now you can transfer this to a bowl. And now to prevent this pastry cream from getting a skin, you just put a piece of plastic wrap right down on the surface. Let this come to room temperature and then refrigerate until you're ready to use it. Now I want to show you how to make the espresso glaze for the tops of the eclairs and the cream puffs. 4 to 6 tablespoons of heavy cream, 4 teaspoons of powdered espresso. And we're adding, for additional flavor, about 1/4 of a cup of maple syrup. And to this, approximately 2 cups of sifted confectioner's sugar. You can sift right into the bowl. Confectioner's sugar is notoriously lumpy. That's why we sift it. And it also takes a lot of confectioner's sugar to make a thick glaze. You want it shiny and bright. It's a nice color. So this can just sit and become even more flavorful. That looks good. So here we have our creme patissiere, which still needs to cool. We have our glaze made. We have all our profiterole and éclair and cream puffs ready to fill. One of my favorite desserts to serve to guests is a big, puffy profiterole filled with homemade vanilla ice cream and swimming in a moat of chocolate sauce. Really spectacular. I'm mixing up some whipped cream to lighten our creme patissiere. Look how beautiful it looks. Bright yellow, lots of specks of vanilla bean. And here is our glaze, that lovely maple espresso glaze that's going to be the topping for our éclair. And I have a delicious, delicious milk and cream and chocolate sauce. So I'm whipping up the cream so I can fold it into our cold creme patissiere. If you're going to serve the large cream puffs as profiterole for a dinner party, you can cut the tops off with a serrated knife, fill the inside with a scoop of homemade vanilla ice cream. And you can put these all in the freezer just for a few minutes so the ice cream is really hard before you serve it. Put it on a decorative plate. I like to sprinkle the top with just a little bit of powdered sugar. You're gonna serve it immediately. Just pour some chocolate sauce on the plate. That is a spectacular profiterole. And here is our cream. We can fold this right into the Creme Patissiere. Using a rubber spatula, fold the whipped cream in. The cream really does lighten the pastry cream. You can see how it did lighten it up a lot. And now fit a pastry bag with a long filler tube and make a little hole right in the end of the éclair and in the other side too, so that you make sure that the éclair has filling in both sides. Now, I'll show you how to glaze it. This is our glaze. Stir it up so there's no crust, and then just gently upside down. There you have a spectacular looking éclair. And if you want to do an éclair and a cream puff on the same plate, you can do that. So beautiful, so utterly tasty. These gougères have a mix of Gruyere and Parmesan cheese and herbs. They are very fragrant when baking and even more fragrant to the taste. Now, once you've mastered pâte choux, you can go on and elaborate a little bit with the dough. I'd like to show you how to make something called gougères, which are wonderful little herb cheese puffs that taste so good with champagne or a cocktail. The dough is basically the same: 1 cup of water, 1 stick of butter, half a cup, and 1 teaspoon of salt, and a scant teaspoon of sugar. Now bring this to a boil, and that's what you're going to add your flour to. You can see that the butter is melting. Stir in 1 cup of flour all at once and stir until it's completely dissolved. Cook for 2 to 3 minutes. The flour cooks. You can see the film on the bottom of the pan. Put this mixture right into a bowl, and you're going to add your eggs to the mixture once it cools down a little bit. It has to cool down. While it's still warm, add your cheese. 1½ cups of Gruyere and 1/4 cup of Parmesan. And now add 4 eggs, 1 by 1. 1 egg. This makes about 60 1½ inch puffs. It's a great hors d'oeuvre recipe. And 1 more egg. At the same time, add your chopped dill and your chopped chives. 2 tablespoons of each. Looks really good. And just 1/4 teaspoon of fresh paprika and a fresh grating of nutmeg. Not too much, maybe a big pinch. Now these can be made in advance, kept somewhere in a dry, cool place, unbaked, until right before your guests arrive or right after they arrive and already drinking their first drink, because they will love these served hot. They're very, very good. I serve these often at my house. I have a pastry bag fitted with a 1/2 inch pastry tip, and now you're ready to pipe onto parchment sheets and make small mounds like that. And this is going to make probably 2 trays, about this size. These look good. You can really even out the shape with cold water. There. Those look good. And then egg wash each one. Egg mixed with just a little bit of water. 1 egg. 2 tablespoons of water. And top with just a very, very tiny sprinkling of a little bit more grated Gruyere. The egg will help the cheese adhere. So get these right into a 375-degree oven and set your timer. These gougères are hot out of the oven. So delicious. Serve them in a nice white linen napkin in a silver bowl. Gougères are pâte à choux at its best.